And it's lovely to see. Okay, so I need to say right at the beginning, we are recording this. So if you would prefer not to be visible, then do turn off your video. The recording will be posted on the ITAA YouTube channel, and members will get a notice of when it's available to be viewed. But if you prefer not to be on the video, then do turn it off. And another practical thing, I think, maybe somebody will correct me if I'm saying the wrong thing here, but I think our preference is if you don't use the chat. So if you have something to say, please say it to everybody rather than do side chats. There is one thing that will go into the chat very soon, and that is the link to Mentimeter. Those of you who were here last time will remember that we have a wonderful whiteboard system called Mentimeter, and we will be asking you to use that at some point, and that link will be in the chat. Okay, so again, welcome. It's really great that so many people want to be involved in this. We're all delighted. And before we go any further, I think it would be good if all the members of the Ethics Committee could just show themselves and just say a word of hello. Whoever would like to. There are 6 of us or 7 of us here, I think.
Yeah, here's Michelle here. Hello from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tomoko from Osaka, Japan.
And hi, I'm Jan Grant from Sydney, Australia.
And I'm Anne Tucker from Nelson, New Zealand.
I'm Pete Shotton, Manchester, England.
We've also got Anna de Graaf, who is muted at the moment.
Wait a minute. Well, I'm Anna from Utrecht in the Netherlands, and together with Jan, I co-chair the Ethics Committee.
Lovely. So that's all of us. So we're the folks who've planned this, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of background to it. The hostess. Oh, right. Okay. So just as an introduction, we began this process because we did a survey, you may remember, of all the members of ITAA about ethics, what you value about the way that we're working, what else you would like to see. And one of the strong requests was for opportunities to actually have practical thinking and talking about ethics issues in groups together. And so that's what is the thinking that lies behind this event today. So we're going to actually, first of all, do some introductory things, and then we will be asking you to participate. And just before we do that, I'm going to hopefully share screen and show you something that I think you might find useful, which I call the concentric contract. Can you just give me a thumbs up that you can see that you've got it on your screen?
Yes.
It's working. Great. Okay. So I like to use this because it shows the different levels of what we're participating in. The outside circle, which I can of course use my thing to show you. The outside circle is the context in which we're meeting and working. So our context for today is, as I just mentioned, that it grew out of a request for opportunities to actually talk about ethical issues. And so that's the reason, the generating thing, and the basis of what we're doing here today. So within that, how do we relate? And of course, we're all transactional analysts or trainee transactional analysts. And we know that we're going to treat each other with respect, and we're going to take responsibility for our own thinking and what we say. And within that, we have a task for today, which is to have some discussions around ethical issues. So I thought that might just be a useful way of looking at the different levels of how we're participating today. So I'm going to stop the share and go back to running you through what's going to happen now. I keep wanting to say this morning, and of course it's not this morning if you're in New Zealand. Say it's morning for me, but what's going to happen over the next hour and a half? We're going to start with a PowerPoint, which has been prepared by Anne Tucker and Jan Grant, and they will talk you through that. And that gives you some background and some ways of thinking and some ways that we might approach the issues that we're going to be looking at. And as we come towards the end of that, we will actually be looking at a couple of issues that Anne and Jan are going to bring to us. And for the first round, the members of the Ethics Committee will actually have a discussion around those issues. And what we hope to do by that is demonstrate for you an exploratory way of working rather than an adversarial way of this is right and this is wrong. So it's a real discussion. The other members of the Ethics Committee don't know what the situations are that they're going to bring. So we will have our discussion about that, and you will have the opportunity to actually consider that in small groups, which you will be put into by Michele. At that point, we'll introduce you to using the Mentimeter to actually record your reflections as you have your chat. Then back to the big group and maybe share some thoughts about that. And then after that, we'll put you back into the same groups for a longer time. And this is your opportunity to bring issues that you've been thinking about, things that bother you, things which have been stimulated by the questions that we put in the poster advertising this event. And so you'll have 25 minutes in those groups to actually talk through as many issues as you have time for or as you want to. And the idea of that is to familiarize yourselves with asking questions, looking at different aspects and all those things, which I'm sure you get anyway. And then we'll come back together and finish in the plenary, and we will finish at my 12:30, an hour and a half from now, just under. Folks, is that talking to the committee now? Have I remembered everything that we needed to say? Did I miss anything out?
That's
Is
good.
it okay? Okay, and it's okay with you,
You're doing
Michelle? I
great.
don't have any technicalities. Okay? Okay. So I'm going to hand over to Anne and Jan, and they're going to introduce us to their presentation.
Thank you, Trudy.
Okay.
Can you share the screen, Michele, please? Thank you.
You are allowed to share, Anne.
Yes, please.
You are the host now, Anne.
Thank you. Okay. I'll just go find it. Okay. Can you see that one?
Yes.
Good.
Good. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Michele. So what we're looking at is how do we tussle with ethical dilemmas? And what we've been exploring on the Ethics Committee are ways to approach ethical issues, ethical dilemmas with an open mind, ideally able to set up dialogue between the people involved so that we use it as a learning experience And our aim is to move away from parental notions of what's right and wrong and use it much more as what's in this for all of us to learn. And perhaps the first thing we often notice is that we're in a bit of a tussle, perhaps looking a bit like the stunned tiger looking at us here. And that's sometimes what it feels like when we realise we've got an ethical issue bubbling away.
So what we're looking at here is that we have often got different perspectives on the same issue, but we see it quite differently. So when we're talking and listening to each other's perspective, we get an increased understanding of what the perspective is from the other person. So different ways of seeing reality, different ways of thinking about the same issue and coming from our different perspectives. So we allow this time to listen to each other before we actually move into actually solving the problem. And when we get to the situation where we start to think about what might be some of the ways to find a way forward, we're thinking about what is our personal responsibility and how do we actually start to look for the solutions and the resolutions. But that comes after we've really listened to each other. So Jan, do you want to start this one?
And we're thinking about our ego state model here of often in our parent ego state, we have ideas of what's right and wrong and also what we value as being a good thing or a bad thing. So being aware of what's going on for us at a parent level is a really important part of this. Not necessarily where we want to communicate from, but really important that we're aware of our own values and at times our judgments.
And also thinking about it from the child ego state. I really enjoyed listening to and reading Vanita English, where she talks about how the need for listening to the child, and if we don't listen, that the potential to sabotage what actually is going to happen with our adult ego state. So really listening to what our child needs are.
And then what we want to do is be able to come from an adult space, taking into consideration what's going on at a parent level, what's going on at a child level, and to be able to integrate that so that we're communicating with the other person or people from an informed adult ego state.
So when we think about what our principles are, they are totally integrated. So I've added in here receiving appropriate strokes because it's one of the things that Claude Steiner added into a principle. So there's 4 aspects of being respectful of ourselves as well as other people, of taking responsibility, of making different decisions and receiving appropriate strokes that we can give ourselves and we can give other people.
So what does it mean to be operating from this new paradigm? And I'm wondering if anyone else on the committee would just like to briefly say anything about what it means to them. Anyone else want to make a comment?
Yeah, I'll make
paradigm. Sorry.
No, after you,
Sorry.
Anna. No, you go first.
Okay. The new paradigm facilitates to stay away from shaming and blaming. That has given ethics a very bad name, in our opinion, and it helps us to be more involved with learning and developing. And I think that's a good way to go. Truly.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Anna.
I just wanted to say that both Anna and I have been involved in the ethics committee since before the changes began. And the contrast with the new way of working is that it's so much more relaxing. I wouldn't say it wasn't sometimes hard, but it does give an opportunity to actually open up to different possibilities rather than looking for what's right and what's wrong. And so from the way that I actually feel when I'm working, it's more relaxing.
Thank you, Trudy. Beautiful. Thank you. Anyone else want to make a comment? Tomoko, Michelle, Peter?
I go. To start operating, we need to start speak out. It's very important when we feel some kind of uneasy, just speak out with somebody around. That's all.
Thank you. Beautiful.
And
Yeah.
I guess,
Yes,
I
Peter.
guess for me, sorry, Michelle. As a new member of the committee, I've kind of seen this as being ethics as exploring rather than ethics as policing, which was a very important distinction for me in joining the committee.
That's a lovely distinction, Pete. Thank you. And Michelle?
Yeah, for me is speak with courage and remembering the meaning of courage from the heart, from the core.
Thank you. So here are a couple of dilemmas that Anne and I have faced, thinking about appropriate dress in the workplace and appropriate touch in the workplace.
And another one that, because I'm organisational, the idea of, and when there are situations where people touch or have looks or there's flirting or any of these kind of aspects where people feel uncomfortable, how do we actually manage those particular situations?
So what we're going to do now is ask the members of the ethics committee to process with Anne and I an issue each that we've brought to this webinar. And they're going to ask questions and help us think it through and explore our options.
So some of the things that we I will be working towards will be, how do we stay with inquiry without blaming or shaming, actually being open and honest, willing to be transparent and prepared to learn.
So shall I go first, Anne, with mine?
Yes, where you go.
Okay, so this is an issue from my training group where I have a trainee who's a very vibrant, colourful, lovely woman, and she wears very interesting clothes and most often wears very low-cut tops. And I'm feeling a little uncomfortable about that. I feel uncomfortable about challenging it, but I'm also aware it may be distracting to her clients. So I'm wondering how to process that and perhaps how to challenge her about the appropriateness of her dressing as a professional. And I feel really nervous about confronting that. So what sort of things do you think I need to be thinking about?
Can I just say something before we get into the discussion? Because some people maybe need to mute themselves because I can hear quite a lot of background noise, which is going to interfere with the discussion. So if you're not actually part of the group that's discussing, could you mute yourself, please? Thank you.
Now, I wonder also, could we go back to seeing everybody on the committee? Because it's going to be difficult to talk if we can't see each other.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. So if that's it. Oh, that's better. Yeah,
that's lovely. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
May I start? Because just right at the end of what you said, Jan, you said you felt very anxious, and I just wondered what it was that do you know what the anxiety is about?
Thank you. That's a good question. So I think partly it's being a feminist, I think women have got a right to dress however they want to dress. So I don't think I've got a right to impinge on someone else's style of dress. And then on the other hand, I feel like I have a professional responsibility maybe to bring awareness that perhaps her dress is not always, even reluctant to use the word, but the most appropriate for a professional setting, fine in a personal or social setting, but perhaps would be good for her to be aware of how that might come across or be a bit confusing in her professional role.
Okay, yeah. So I'm also wondering about whether you've noticed effects in the group.
I can't say that I have particularly. No, I think people in general in the training group just kind of accept this is a colourful person and that's how she dresses.
I guess for me, this throws something up about, well, for me personally, something about the male gaze. And about my own issues as being a father of daughters and what I might be bringing to this. But also it makes me think about conventions around professionalism as well. So I think
Yes.
I'm kind of fascinated that I can look at this from different angles and actually think, is professionalism completely related to appearance, or is there something that might be evoked by somebody's appearance that might take us to a new level in terms of professionalism? That actually challenges because we have to look further to find the qualities that person's bringing. I don't know, it throws up a lot to think about.
It does, Pete, you're right. And I'm thinking for some clients, perhaps even particularly for male clients, that could be very distracting if you're looking at your counsellor's cleavage.
It could be, but it could also be very productive in terms of what needs to be discussed in that encounter.
Perhaps, yeah, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is just what I meant right at the beginning when I was saying you can start with something that seems really tiny, and it starts to expand, doesn't it, into, well, why shouldn't she show her cleavage?
Absolutely, yeah.
Whose responsibility is it? And it's
And
not
and I might not think it's a professional way to dress, but that doesn't mean others would necessarily agree with me. Some other people may say that's fine.
Could you say something about why you think this is an ethical issue? What's ethical about it?
Well, I think for me as the trainer, I'm deliberating. Do I need to say something? Should I say something? Do I not say something? Is it not my place? And I'm thinking particularly in a training group where we're looking at people's professional roles. What does it mean to step into the role of being a counsellor? And how do I present myself as a counsellor? Is that the same as in my personal life, or does it need to be different? And I don't know the answer. Otherwise, I would have said something to her already. And I've been thinking about it, but not quite known how to approach it.
So if you imagine yourself saying something to her, what might you say?
Yeah, again, that's a really good question, because I've been playing with this in my mind of just perhaps raising it in terms of perhaps thinking about how your clients might react, that you're lovely, bright, colourful person, and how do you think clients will react to the way you present yourself? Which is not directly going to it, but I guess I'll have to be braver if she doesn't really get what I'm talking about.
I was just wondering
I think that's a great question, by the way.
It is a good question. Yeah, it is a good question. But I was wondering, you've got the group there. Is there any way in which you can make this a part of training?
Yes, I guess I could. So what were you thinking there, Trudy, to perhaps
Well, I don't know. Because you're training, counselling trainings, I guess.
That's right, they're counselling.
Yeah, okay. So they are going to need to think about things like this. And I wondered if you could, I don't know in what part of the training it would come, but to just introduce a day or a half day just on meeting clients or whatever. and, you know, burns first 3 minutes and those sort of things, as a way of not making it personal to her, but
yes, generalizing from it. Yeah,
involving the whole group and the whole issue. I don't
I
know.
was thinking, I was thinking perhaps of using Schmidt's role theory too, to look at what's the difference in how we present ourselves and how we relate to others in our personal roles, in our social roles, in our professional roles. Perhaps looking at a dress as part of the professional role. That maybe would get through without a direct confrontation. Maybe not.
Yeah, and have her find out herself what the effect might be of the way she dresses. And you have the whole group there, so she can work with the feedback. And and remember, most people don't feel much resistance to what they think of themselves. So if she could draw her own conclusions, the chance of her implementing that would be far higher. I like that, Jen.
Oh, I really like the idea of using the training group and using that as an opportunity for feedback. I think that would be really helpful.
They will have their thoughts and their feelings.
And I certainly don't want to shame her. I think that's been my reticence to say anything.
Why would you?
Yeah.
Could it be spoken about with regard to boundaries and professional boundaries as part of it?
Can I stop you, Susie? Because this is supposed to be just the ethics committee at the moment. You will have your opportunity. You will be in small groups shortly. Okay.
Oh, good.
This is a very interesting subject because in Japan, we have a culture of wearing what you're wearing or what you should wearing when you are standing as a leader. So everybody wears almost the same suits, especially the new stage of the working place or anything else. So how do you make a differences? How do you can find the differences in between the people? So it's a good timing to asking her culture she has about the professional things.
Okay, that's really interesting, Tomoko, because this person has also lived in Queensland, which is hot and quite casual. So that may have been part of it. She's come from a different culture. And I noticed, you're right, there's a cultural aspect to this in Japan. Very sharply and professionally. And some Australians are much more casual than that.
Yeah. I lived in California, so it's quite different between Japan and California. So.
Look, that's been really helpful. Thank you. That's really given me some food for thought and a way to ahead. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jan. So let's move to the second one and hear Anna's issue. Anne's issue, sorry.
So potentially, I had a particular colleague who was working in an organisation and was really quite proud of the fact that she was flirting with her with the person who had asked her to come into the organisation to do some work. And thinking now, how does that impact on the relationship? How does it impact on the work that she's doing with his staff? How does that impact the way they feel about her when they see her flirting? And is there any way that it would be useful to bring some awareness to the impact that that relationship might have and how she might think about that? So they're the things that I've been wondering about.
You started asking questions yourself, which is marvelous. What questions? What question is the most important to you? What are you most curious about?
Yeah, most curious about the way in which she might lose an opportunity to have a psychologically really good, clear contract with his staff. and how that might impact her potential to bring a trusting relationship so that they can talk openly and freely about the things that are concerning them in the workplace.
I like that conclusion. And what might be the impact of that on her client?
Yeah, it would be how might I raise that, being a colleague with her, and what right might I have of raising that with her, and also thinking about, you know, one of our ethical principles that we think about is responsibility, and to clients as well. So what's the impact that it would have on our relationship as well?
What do you think if you start with an answer? What would be the impact on your relationship?
Well, I think it would be very much dependent on how I raise that.
And I'm thinking too, if the person you know flirts with someone, I wonder how that affects the group dynamics in an organisation. Because why that person and not someone else? And it could stir up quite a lot of feelings, not only for the person being flirted with, but the people not being flirted with. So I wonder how that affects the group. Do you have any ideas about that?
Plenty. I think it has a huge impact on all of the people that are involved in various aspects in the organisation, because it was so blatant. The way she talked about it was so blatant. So huge impacts on the people who are watching and observing and taking note, and yeah, the psychological mistrust.
Can I clarify that, because it said about touch in the workplace, that this flirting is a very kind of touchy relationship where maybe the culture isn't generally in the culture? Because I was aware of what I was feeling was excluded in some way, and watching something take place. And I was wondering if that was a way into the conversation about your relationship with her and how this might impact.
Can you say some more, Pete?
Well, I guess I think in workplaces, and I'm thinking in group situations, I am always, and this is some of my stuff, I guess, monitoring my behavior in relation to others, wondering, and maybe this is another male gaze thing, wondering what's appropriate, wondering what the culture is, and also maybe feeling awkward in a new situation where there might be all sorts of hierarchies going on. And I guess it sounds like the client here sounds like they're not making much, they're not considering those aspects, or they're turning a blind eye to a lot of those aspects. Maybe I'm overcautious in these situations from some of my experience in organizations, but I think there is something to discuss about impact, and especially with something like touch. I think in the last dilemma we were thinking about gaze and maybe sort of psychological processes just in a more passive way of what are people looking at and making sense of. But there's something active about this, and it's being asked to actively observe and engage in other people's processes.
Good. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, there's also possibly a systemic aspect to this, isn't there? You know, that there are places where some behaviors are considered normal, and actually it's not an infringement. So there is also sort of looking at, again, like I suppose we were talking about with the previous one when Tomoko said about the culture of dress in Japan. There's always that sort of surrounding of culture, which will impinge in some way. Sorry, that's not very clear, but it was just, I just wanted to put that in.
Yeah.
That we can sometimes look at these things as personal issues, and there are aspects of cultural norms and mores in there too.
Yeah, I'm also thinking something that Jan brought up about role theory, and thinking about what's the professional role of somebody who is going into an organisation as a consultant, in some of the aspects that might be involved in that process. Yeah, but thank you for your contributions. It's helpful.
And thanks to both of you for doing that and stimulating. So now, if I'm right, where's Michelle? There she is. You will now be given the opportunity to talk about these things in small groups, and Mentimeter is available. So please do put any comments that you want to up on Mentimeter right from the start, because when we can look at those together later. And so just 10 minutes in small groups, and then we'll come back into the plenary.
Yes, the link for Mentimeter I publish in the chat, and is useful if you open your computer or cell phone before to go to the breakout rooms, okay?
And I just want to check something with Anne, because I might have made a mistake here. Did you want to show that slide before they go into small groups, Anne?
Yeah, yes, that would be good. Just give me a second. Michelle, can I just go straight to the slide?
Let me see what I can do here, because I need to go the host to organize the
Right.
group. Yes.
Okay. So maybe what I can do is just say, so yeah, I think Trudy, that's fine. We can just go straight to
okay, so we can go into groups, and we can look at the slide again later if you want to. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, we thought we got 25.
Sorry, somebody was saying something. Was that you, Mo?
We thought we got 25 minutes. Some of us did.
No, 25 minutes. We're going to put you back into groups for 25 minutes. This was just 10 minutes.
Okay.
Sorry if that wasn't clear. No, it's two sessions. You will be back in your groups in quite a short time. Same group, so you can carry on. But this was just to check before we ask you to discuss things that you have brought yourselves, just to check if there's anything. Apparently nobody used the Mentimeter, but hopefully you will use it when you're back in your groups for the longer session. This was just to check if there's anything you want to say, anything you want to feed back to us, anything you want to ask.
I
we did
the
use
technology, Trudy. The technology was for the Mentimeter. I didn't know how to do it.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay, Michelle, would you like to just talk people through what to do?
Well, we did use it.
Okay, I'm seeing some comments now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, good. I put the link in the chat. You need to click in this link, and then it's just write your thoughts on the board. It's outside the Zoom. You go outside the Zoom to another website, Mentimeter.
Okay. Well, let's try it again next time in the next group session. So don't worry about that. So this is just open time for anything you want to say, but if you're ready to move on, then that's fine too.
And
Nicole,
Trudy,
are you signaling? Yes.
yeah, I would be curious to have a look at the comments that have been put onto Mentimeter before we go into the next breakout, if possible.
Okay, let's ask our technician to do that. Could you do that,
Yes,
Michelle?
I can.
Thank you.
Just a minute. Okay, someone is writing. Okay.
Someone is writing even at this moment.
Yeah. Okay. Can you see?
Ah,
Oh, wonderful.
Every time someone is writing, then move the cloud.
oh, right. So are you saying that everything in the cloud is things that people have written?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Fantastic.
Great.
Well, that looks really good. Okay. Cultural parent. Wow. Just appeared.
Yeah. And when we have something bigger, is because more than one write exactly the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And it's changing all the time. That's wonderful. So somebody had a question. David Linford Smith.
Yeah, it was just more of an observation, really, just
Okay.
from a personal perspective of, I guess sometimes we might make a consideration of how we dress or how we look, and then we're happy with that. So actually that client, that person might have already made and thought, well, actually, you know, am I okay? And they've done their own internal, you know, professional audit almost. I came from a background as a film editor and would sit in an edit suite in a t-shirt and jeans or shorts, and the producer would come in all smartly dressed, and I was never out there. The public never saw me. And so that's my life. So now, as a therapist, are you put off by the fact that I've got a big beard and I've got earrings? Sometimes I used to wear spikes in my ears. My jeans were always ripped and I wore t-shirts and stuff. And, you know, some of my trainers were like, maybe you should wear a shirt and a tie or something. And actually a lot of people were like, no, stay as you are, stay as you are. That's how your clients want you. So
David, I think there could be a whole discussion in this, which you might like to do when you go back into the group, because for me, it's reversing the discussion that we were having, because so often when we talk about mode of dress, we're talking about how women dress. So you're giving us an example from your own experience, and that is really good. And maybe that's something that you can continue to talk about with everybody else. Okay, I think it's time to go back into groups, but before that, Anne wants to show you another slide. Is that right, Anne?
Yeah, thank you. So, Jan, I'm not sure where you are.
Have we lost Jan?
I'm here. I just had my mute button on.
That's right. Okay. Yes, so do you want to talk about this one?
So yeah, why we've put this one here with the worried or ill at ease, that often the first time we notice we're processing something, we feel somehow ill at ease about a situation. And I think it's very important to pay attention to that. So we're asking you to think about a time where you did feel uncomfortable or ill at ease about something, and then that led you to realise that there was an ethical issue involved. And just to go with whatever that might turn up for you.
Thanks, Jan. That's great. So it's back into groups time, and this time you have 20 minutes if we're going to finish on time. So we will bring you back into the plenary in 20 minutes, and this is your time to look at any issue that any of the group members want to talk about. Okay. Okay. Oh, welcome back, everybody. Please remember to mute yourself as you come back into the big group, unless you've got something you immediately want to say. Okay, so what's the best way to do this? Shall we share Mentimeter? Would that be a good way to look at what you've all been saying? Please mute.
இந்த டாக்டருக்கு 3000 ட்ரான்ஸ்ஃபர் பண்ணேன். ஓகே நான் பண்ணிடுறேன். இப்பவே பண்ணிடு மறந்துடாத. இப்ப பண்ணிட்டு
Help, folks.
சரி ஜா. பை. நீயே தான் மணி அந்த பேடிஎம் உன் நம்பர்ல தான் ரெஜிஸ்டர் பண்ணனும்.
So Michelle, this will show additions. Oh wow, as they're being made. Is that right?
We have the word power was mentioned more times because it's bigger.
It's bigger in the middle. It's taken over from cultural parent, inviting self-awareness. Great. So can we share this with people? Is there some way that people can download it? Oh yeah, you can if you.
Yeah, I think I can do a print screen and send the picture on the chat.
Great. Great. Okay. So as well as looking at the Mentimeter, it would be good to invite a few contributions from anything that from your groups that you want to share with everybody, any questions that came up or any insights or just anything that you want to say. Obviously we can't hear from everybody, but we can certainly hear from a few people. So please do speak up if you'd like to share something with us. Anybody?
I was just thinking that we worked through quite a lot of starting with thinking about how an ethical issue might be raised, and often that it starts with a judgment, and then that leads to an assumption, and then followed by a discount of the other person's ability to actually think about it. But then everything seemed to come back to that power, that word power. Who has the power? Who has the authority? And I wonder how it's not a question that I think we can answer, but I wonder how we might think about, you know, why does it always seem to go back to that when we talk about ethical issues? Who has the power? Who has the authority? Somebody has to make decisions in the end, I guess, if we come to that point. And it was just that thought that it always does seem to go back to that. I don't know whether that's very clear, but I mean, these are just jumping thoughts at the moment. Yeah.
Really interesting what you said about those stages of making a judgment, which is backed by an assumption, and there is a discount. And that's something that we're all familiar dealing with clients, maybe not always with colleagues. So maybe that's the issue, really, to turn the discount into an accounting. Sorry, I'm lecturing, I'll stop.
No.
For me, I much associate with what you say, Jen. And for me, then power has also to do with the other side of it is vulnerability. So who is the most vulnerable, or what is the most vulnerable in a situation? And that's actually maybe what you're trying to protect in an ethical issue. And then it makes sense that you bump into the issue of power.
Yeah.
So can I offer something there? Is that okay?
Mm.
Yeah. So it seems to me what's being described is that unfortunately people get caught into the drama triangle when there's an ethical issue because it becomes competitive. And if we could step outside of the drama triangle into a growth framework where questions of each other's practice become an opportunity for change and growth rather than I'm right and you're wrong. That would be my contribution. And it's restorative practice. It's restorative practice.
Say more about restorative practice, Mo.
The restorative justice originally started in prisons with and has extended to schools. And I've got a chapter in a book on it, using TA with restorative practice. And it's always about no blame, but accounting, different perspectives and how something comes about, and then looking at who's hurt, if someone's hurt, putting that right.
Thank you. Somebody else was wanting to speak. David Linford-Smith.
Yeah, hiya there. Thank you. It was just really about the whole idea of what are ethics, and I'm thinking like we come to the table with our own values, our own cultural, societal, and family values, and then we have the values of whichever organization that we're working for, and they are only guidelines. They're not the law, they are guidelines. And if we then bring all of these different ethical viewpoints, for me the one thing that will bring it together is just at least one other person. What is your opinion? What is your judgment on this? Because I alone, if I'm not necessarily sharing, am I being truly ethical? Is it getting the opinion of another person or two other people to keep me in line? That's why we go to supervision. We get our opinion from our peers and from our supervisor. And so, yeah, there's a lot there, isn't there? It's not so simple as having, you know, IATA's ethical thing or BACP or whoever. And if you, there's all sorts of things there, isn't there? So it's a really fascinating. But when Mo talked about the drama triangle, we discussed that in our group, and the fact that we were willing to reflect, and that's probably all we can ever ask of people, is the fact that our peer brought the issue and were willing to be vulnerable enough. So we moved into the winner's triangle to explore it, and we weren't going to judge them, but we could judge the situation in a I'm okay, you're okay way. So yeah, very useful exercise.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. One more, and then we'll move into closing. If there's anybody wanting to say something you're burning to say.
I would like to just very quick to point out or underline the importance of contracts. You know, when we are in a relationship or any kind of relationship, work, therapy, supervision, it's very important to have clear why I am here and why or how is your role, how is my role? Because at times, you know, either part they expect you to know and being adult and to investigate and to assume that you had to know. So that is the kind of slips into ethical thing, and I don't want to underline that in there is malicious thing, rather than mutuality. Help me to get there, or I would like to help you to get there. We are mutuals, we are colleagues, even if I am not into the titles of you know, TSTPT or all the kind of hierarchical thing on the TA, but the contract is very important, at least for me as a trainee.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really, I think that's a really good note, actually, to move into our closing time. A reminder that you know, that is so important. What is this situation? What is this context? What is the contract that's appropriate to what we're doing here? So thank you very much for that. Folks, our hour and a half is coming to an end. So the Ethics Committee, I'm sure, would be very happy to hear any really quick pieces of feedback. And then we will say goodbye. Let's open it up to everyone for any finishing thoughts.
Can I just clarify where we're going from here with this? What we've discussed today? I may have missed that at the beginning, but I'm not sure what we
Where we're going from here in terms of what happens next. Is that what you mean? Yeah. Well, we did have some discussion while you were in your groups. The committee did have some discussion, and we got the impression that the time in groups is really valuable and that we could actually extend that. So we're thinking that the next webinar, which will be, we just fixed the date, can I tell folks, the 27th of October, we will invite someone to present something, a short piece, and then the rest of the time will be for groups to discuss. So really get to tussle with a juicy issue would be the next stage that we would be thinking of. And we will continue to share our reflections, ideas, whatever, through our column in the script, which is now going to be every month. So that's where you can go to learn what the Ethics Committee are thinking at any time.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Lots of goodbye messages appearing in the chat.
Well, thank you to you, committee, Trudy, and the others. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Tessin from India. This is my first ever ITA webinar. I'm a regional member. And it's a very amazing experience, especially the work in the groups. It's very powerful, very thought-provoking. Okay, so excited to be here.
Thank you. Thank you and welcome, and hope you'll join us for future webinars too. Thank you.
Sure, I will. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to echo that as a trainee. It was a wonderful opportunity to meet colleagues across the globe. So thank you. And a very interesting discussion too.
And a nice message just arrived from Alistair saying that it passed too quickly. That's a nice thought. Thank you, Alistair.
I would say the best hour and a half I've spent on any kind of TA webinar for a long time. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. It's a lovely stroke. Thanks, Mo. Okay, so because contracting is part of our life and it is now 90 minutes, I think this is the time to say goodbye. And thank you, everybody, for your contributions and your willingness to engage and participate. It's been lovely to meet you all and to actually see us all moving on together. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good day, night.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
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 And goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.